Welcome back. In the 10-minute workshop this week, I'm going to take you through the process of choosing and installing a touch latch for inset doors like this one and overlay doors like this one. I haven't actually fitted the touch latches yet, which is why the door's not opening. That's coming up next. So there's quite a few different sort of touch latches that you can get. I'm going to take you through a couple of the common types, the ones that I used to use before I knew any better, and then I'll run you through the ones that I prefer to use now. You might be familiar with this type. It's a little bit industrial, a little bit agricultural. It requires a sort of physical connection, and the latch pushes in against a plate and there's a thing that drops down to latch it in place, and then you push it in again and with a bit of luck it'll let go. Pressed metal, sometimes galvanized. They're not super reliable, but they are quite good. For example, for an outdoor meter cupboard or something like that, something that you need a little bit of weatherproofing on, that you actually need the door to physically latch. And they do have a bit of a habit of staying latched, unfortunately. They're not super reliable, and I wouldn't generally recommend them, but they do the job, and they are relatively cheap and widely available, but not really the kind of thing you'd want on a piece of fitted furniture. When I started doing bits of fitted furniture myself, I started using these guys, these little mini roller tip touch latches. Again, it requires a physical connection. The latch literally fits over that roller, and as you push it in and it's sprung out, it gives enough space for that latch to open fully. It's quite a stiff spring on a short throw, and because they have slotted screw holes for adjustment, they have a bit of a tendency to let go after a while, so they're not super reliable in the long term. I've got a couple of these on some doors of mine that have been there for many years, I have to be totally fair, and periodically I do have to sort of undo the screws slightly and push them back in again to make sure that they fit properly. But again, relatively cheap and cheerful and widely available. But my personal preference these days is for the Bloom tip-on magnetic touch latch. This is a very simple little piston with a spring inside it and a simple magnet on the end, so it is a magnetic touch latch. It comes with two catches effectively. One is a simple countersunk washer with a screw, so that just sort of magnetically latches itself on, and the other one is a much slimmer self-adhesive version, and we use that for overlay doors rather than inset doors, and I'll show you why the difference just now. We'll start with taking a look at the inset door to begin with though. Now with an overlay door, the little piston, the touch latch, gets drilled into the carcass itself, and fairly obviously on an inset door like this one there's nothing to drill into, so the little piston, the touch latch, goes into a carrier, a little holder like this one. The holder's got a removable top plate with two screw holes in it, and that's how it's screwed onto the carcass itself. What I would recommend that you do though before you take that out is to transfer those screw holes around onto a piece of tape along the side of the little holder, so that you know where those positions are, because it's going to make it much easier to mark those positions up and then drill them through while it's all in a complete unit like this. With the door fitted, I'm offering up the latch and holder to get the approximate position. Then, using a length of tape to protect the cabinet, I'm marking a perpendicular centre line, and allowing for the thickness of the washer, I can mark the screw positions and fit the top plate. And then clip on the body of the holder. Okay, so we've got our little touch latch piston fitted. It's in the right position. We just got to get our little magnetic dingus in the right place as well. And one thing you do need to watch out for is, because obviously there's a bit of a gap, 1.5 mm, maybe 2 mm above the door, because you don't want this binding against the carcass. You don't actually want the little washer to be dead centered over that, because you might actually get it coming up above the top of the door like that. So what we'll do, we'll mark where it needs to be, and then we'll put the washer on screw it on so it just comes up flush with the top of the door. With the washer fitted, there's still a few millimetres of adjustment available by screwing the piston in or out. So there we are, that's our inset door touch latch fitted. Again, there's no hint of the little washer standing proud of the door there. The door fits flush with the face because we've got 3 or 4 millimetres of adjustment on the in-out of the piston. And it works really nicely. Simple, effective, nothing to go wrong. If you absolutely have to, you can actually just treat it like a regular magnetic catch. And so to the overlay door. Again, very similar in principle, but instead of having a hole, a carrier, you actually drill the little piston into a 10mm hole into the carcass. One thing I would say is that if this is for a client, I tend to advise them against having touch latches on an overlay door like this unless there's a top going over the cabinet like that. And the reason for that is fairly obviously because it's a touch latch, it needs a little bit of inward movement before it can spring open, and that means you're always going to have a couple of mil gap at least in there, and that can look a little bit unsightly unless of course you're hiding it with a top of some kind. But again, if it's for clients, just make sure that they're aware of that, because you don't want them coming back after it's all done to say, oh, I didn't realise the doors were going to be gappy, can we change them? And now you've got a 10mm hole in your carcass and there's not a great deal you can do about it. So all we're going to do is, and again, it's just a straight drill in, no great sort of rocket science to it. If you're at all uncomfortable about doing that, then have a practice first on a bit of scrap. I'm just going to wrap a piece of tape around that and give myself a sort of general sight line on it. It's got to go in 50mm deep. And I am going to do mine in 2 passes simply because my 10mm drill bit is as blunt as a dog's hind leg. So I'm going to do an 8mm first and then just ream that out with a 10 just to sort of open that up a little bit. So let's get that done, and then we'll get the super skinny. This is why, incidentally, I'm sorry, because of that gappiness, this is why we have that super skinny little self-adhesive magnetic half to the latch. So it minimises the sort of thickness, the gappiness of the door. But let's get this piston drilled in and then we'll get that fitted. Again, if you have any qualms about drilling a perpendicular hole into a carcass edge like this, then use some kind of guide to help you keep it straight and true. I'm just using a clamping square here for visual reference, held flat against the top of the carcass. And with the piston fitted, I found the easiest way is to attach the skinny plate to the magnetic latch, strip off the backing paper, and then just close the door, giving the double-sided tape a firm press to make sure it stays put. And with an overlay door like this, you'll probably want the piston set in as far as it will go to minimise that gap. And that's really all there is to it for fitting these Blum magnetic tip-on touch latches. Really simple and easy to fit, a little bit of drilling, a little bit of careful measuring and marking, and because there's very few moving parts in them, there's no physical latch to them, they're incredibly reliable. I fitted an awful lot of these over the years and I've never had a single callback about any of them, never had a single failure. Obviously you can use the other ones if you want to, but the last thing you need when you think you've got a job done and dusted is to get a call back 6 months or 8 months down the line from the client to say, oh, we've got a little problem with one of the doors, and you go back and it's one of those stupid little cheap mini roller tip touch latches where the latch is just sort of twisted or it's shifted on its mounting positions, or they've got a little kiddie who's sort of yanked it. These things happen, but with the balloon magnetic ones, they really work exceptionally well. And I'm going to leave it there for this video. Thanks ever so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more weekly workshop videos, and I'm going to leave you with a little clip from this weekend's Patreon video. I do a video most weeks for my Patreon supporters. This one's a special build video just for them. Thanks, of course, to all my Patreon supporters for their continued support of the channel. I'll leave that clip for you, let that run now, and if it looks like the kind of thing you'd be interested in, then come and join the Patreon party at patreon.com/10-minute workshop. But that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care. My little planer thicknesser, I don't think is really up to getting something 25mm square, particularly, not without me playing with it and fettling with it. Fettling it. So anyway, I've decided to use the 25mm MDF sticks for the legs, and you know, I always try and make things properly. My original plan, when I was still thinking about using hardwoods, was to use these little sort of threaded inserts and then drill a hole through the corner of each of the shelf and then bolt the legs through that way. And then I'd only put a screw through the puncture the surface of the base of the thing. And of course, as soon as I tried that with MDF, it split horribly. I tried using dominoes, a 5mm domino, because this is only 25mm thick. It starts to split as soon as you put it in, and even switching to a 4mm, you could start to see some cracking. So I just don't think it's going to be good enough. And also with a 4x20mm domino, you only get 10mm sticking out, so I don't think that's particularly useful. So I've run a few little tests and things. What actually works really well is just gluing it together and whacking a screw through one face. So that's what I'm going to do. And again, with the shells, I've just notched out where the leg goes in, so it just fits in neatly. Pop a screw through there, fill it and sand it back, and then the same top and bottom, they'll just sit flush on this. Whack a screw through the top and fill it and sand it. I did actually just try popping a couple of nails through this, and it held really well. That was without any glue. So I'm fairly sure in terms of construction these will be fit for purpose, but it just feels a little bit like cheating, you know, just sort of gluing and screwing something together. So that's what I'm going to do now. In fact, let me just show you quickly. Oh yeah, part of the wheel reinvention was this, trying to get a straight, oops, trying to drill straight into the end of a piece like this. Almost impossible without a lathe, I think. So I've had to strip down my hinge drill, and I have to remake that later on sometime. And then the other thing that I've done, oh god, let me just about still see that, can't you? Focus. Yeah, so what I've done, I've got the little bandsaw set up to notch these corners of the shelf, and each of the legs, like this, has a little spacer on it, so we don't have to measure anything, and that will go in exactly in the right place, nice and flush on both faces. And then I can just whack a screw down through the top there, or maybe just put a piece of tape over it while the glue sets for 10 minutes, and then put a screw through. Then we can fill that. And once they're done, then I can just add the tops and the bottoms, and we'll be good to go. So that's what I'm going to do now.